Albert Einstein famously said there are only two ways to live your life. One, as though nothing is a miracle, and the other one, as if everything is a miracle. I've probably said it many times here on this channel that I'm often puzzled how some people think that just because they are able to present their views in a nice, coherent, logical way, they should be accepted as the truth, because that's the truth and you cannot argue with the truth. But the truth is, we are way more emotional than rational. And just because something sounds logical, it doesn't mean we are bound to accept it. Because there is always this barrier of the heart. At the heart level, you may decide you are not open to something, you don't want to believe something, and actually nothing and nobody can convince you. And even though it sounds very subjective, it doesn't have to be wrong, because sometimes at the heart level, there is this deeper form of knowing that your brain doesn't know yet. You cannot explain it, but for some reason, you know that a decision would be wrong, and at the end of the day, it turns out quite often that you were right. Some people are afraid to act on these hunches because they think that if they cannot explain something, they should just dismiss it and accept somebody else's thinking just because it seems logical, the other party seems to be having some good arguments, even though something feels wrong. And it often happens that family or other people put a pressure on you to make a certain decision, and the arguments seem rational. It seems it would be a good decision for you, but somewhere in your heart you feel it wouldn't. So then the decision is up to you, because at the end of the day, you will be the one who will live with the consequences. On the other hand, sometimes our hearts rebel against some truths, not because there is something wrong with the truth, meaning the truth not being the truth after all, but because our hearts at that very moment have a different truth of their own. So, for example, if people tell you that love exists, that it does happen to people all the time, but the truth of your heart is rejection, you may hear as many arguments as people may come up with, but still you won't be able to accept it because your heart has already decided what it thinks it's true. Because at the end of the day, it is your heart that will live with the consequences and not other people's hearts. This Sunday we're meditating Matthew 28 verses 16 to 20. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." One thing I really like about the gospel is that it's not too polished or censored. Like, the disciples could have really got rid of fragments that make them look bad, but for some reason they decided not to do it. Huge respect for that. We've already meditated fragments where the disciples doubted the good news, even though they heard about the risen Jesus from people they knew very well. We've also read about Thomas, who doubted because he wasn't in the room with other disciples when Jesus appeared. And now it's even better. They had seen him, but still doubted. So what kind of a doubt is that? Is it a kind of doubt that says, "Oh, I haven't seen you a long time, I can't believe it's you"? Or is it a kind of doubt that is, at its core, a rejection of reality? Let's say you had some really bad experiences when you were a child. Like, your peers bullied you, they didn't like you, they just wanted your homework, anything. And at some point you may have developed a belief, you perhaps were made to believe that you were not likable. Now, as time goes by, you probably accumulate more experiences, good things start happening in your life, but it doesn't really mean that just because your reality changed, your heart has followed suit. What happens in your heart is a completely different matter. People may be good to you and you may react with, "Well, you know what? These kids were wrong. I am likable after all." But you may also react with an attitude of, "Oh, you're nice to me. What do you want in return?" You're just saying these things because you want me to feel better. You pretend to like me, but you don't fool me. Once your heart is stuck in such a mode, it's very difficult to change it because It's more concerned with proving its point than actually letting itself be liberated. And that was the problem with the Pharisees. They only pretended to be open to discussions. They wanted to talk with Jesus about theology, but actually from the very beginning, they already rejected him. Their hearts were already shut down to the message. So if there is love in your life, but you don't recognize it as such, or if there is goodness in front of your very eyes, but you rather doubt it than celebrate it, or even when there is darkness in your life at the moment, and when you hear words like, surely I'm always with you, you really doubt if it applies to you. Maybe it's not a matter of waiting for love to provide more convincing arguments. Maybe it's a matter of checking if the reality of love is actually a reality we are open to in the first place. Perhaps because it's so scary, perhaps because the reality we live in hasn't been really overflowing with love so far, that we are more attached to the vision our little hearts had when life was really hard than to the one presented by God. It sounds like a fairy tale, like it's for children. Sounds very nice, but obviously this is not going to happen in my life. Like, seriously. That said, I'm not trying to promote cheap optimism or forcing yourself to reject all your doubts and believe things you don't really believe in. And it's true that a distrustful heart can be a wise heart, and not everybody who is nice to us actually likes us. But there is a world of difference between being cautious and rejecting life before it has the chance to reject you. I have no idea how much life you have left, but I think you have a whole life ahead of you to be cynical, bitter, and distrustful. And there is a big club of people like that waiting for you to join. You don't have to do it today. Why don't you postpone the membership in that club and see for one day, just for one day for starters, what life could be like in this alternative reality? That's the subject we will meditate on this Sunday, 10 p.m. Central European Time. Bye-bye.